America, if you don't see the insanity that has infected this nation like a viral disease, I can't help you. The truth is, this is insane. There's an article out there on Reason this morning that said Obamacare has granted 1 million incorrect health insurance waiver subsidies. So there were only 8 million people signed up. Turns out only about 3 million actually paid. And out of that, most of those people already had insurance before this whole thing came along, and now they're issuing improper subsidies for up to 1 million of them. The system is so ripe for fraud and abuse, it may well go down in the annals of history as the number one method for the government to lose taxpayer money. It's even bigger than TARP and the IRS and the Pentagon and the wars and all that other nonsense. Obamacare will bankrupt the nation publicly. Well, we're already bankrupt, but this will make it clear that, even the dyslexic accountants at OMB can figure it out. Washington Examiner's got an article out there this morning. Wait until you hear this one. Federal employees and a contractor diverted more than $1 million of charitable donations that were contributions that were made for charity to poor. And they spent it on themselves. People, this isn't just criminal. This is above and beyond criminal. They spent it on themselves for in-office massages, meals at every meeting, luxuries, and unnecessary expenses. They called themselves volunteers and said they needed motivation to help the less fortunate, even though 41 of them were federal workers and were being paid for full-time salaries. They weren't volunteers. They were being paid. And this is just one local chapter of the government's annual workplace charity drive, the Combined Federal Campaign. They got there a day early, and they stayed a day late for the annual training, all on the donations that were made in New Orleans and Las Vegas. They paid for room service. They watched pay-per-view movies, all of it with donated monies. Then they defended their right to do so when they were questioned by auditors. Wait till you hear this. They claimed that the restrictions on spending for things that they bought, like their, the extra days in the hotel, first-class flights, that it didn't apply to donated funds because it wasn't taxpayer money that was involved. So there were no rules to apply to them. Apparently, they tutelaged under Luis Gutierrez. The whole time they were working for the Combined Federal Campaign, which is, Combined Federal Campaign. What the heck does that mean? Who even heard of this thing? And you see, that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. There are thousands of these little things out there. But they were working on the CFC full time. They were loaner executives, right? And so they were loaners from other government jobs who received full-time government salaries while they were on loan as volunteers. This kind of doublespeak is exactly what Ayn Rand and in 1984 told us was happening. I'm a volunteer. What I don't tell you in the interest of public and full disclosure, is that I'm being paid by my employer to be a volunteer. That's not a volunteer. And by the way, while they were being paid to be volunteers, they weren't doing the work that they were being paid full-time to do. So it was a double whammy. The taxpayers got screwed every way but blued. You see, while you're volunteering for this effort and you're being paid to do your job, you're not doing your job. So all of that work is building up. All the work, I know, passing all the oppressive legislation and restrictions and rules and regulations that all the peons, pissants, and peasantry have to follow. So basically, the taxpayers were paying the bill because they weren't doing their paid job. The CFC is overseen by the Office of Personnel Management. And they have it broken up through these regional committees that are made up of government employees, overseeing other government employees, and everybody's in on the joke, but you! Each of these different committees, they contract with an outside not-for-profit. They contract with the outside not-for-profit to do most of the work, and they pay the expenses out of the donations. Federal agencies detail hundreds of employees from their regular duties to volunteer as CFC contractor offices, all at taxpayer expense. The largest regional chapter is the CFC for the National Capital Area, which contracted with Alexandria, Virginia-based nonprofit Global Impact. Global Impact offices occupy custom-built office space with wall-to-wall views of the Potomac River. On these walls are pictures of starving children in Africa juxtaposed against elaborate conference rooms and amenities like a gourmet kitchen. Global Impact has assets of more than $20 million, and according to their latest tax return, the same nonprofit also has the contract for another large CFC campaign, which covers members of the U.S. military on overseas deployments. In 2012, a scathing audit by OPM's Inspector General of Global Impact's work on the D.C. area contract was published. The nonprofit paid its then top executive, Renee Acosta, nearly $500,000 in salary to manage and manipulate all of this lie and excrement. 132 staffers ran the charity drive, including 41 loaned executives who collected federal salaries but worked out of the nonprofit office. The audit identified $764,000 plus in expenses that could have been put to better use for the campaigns, including they ordered or purchased a private box at the stadium where the Washington Nationals play. You know, they had to take a break from all their hard work. Jazz band costs at a leadership conference, a Mardi Gras tour, and a Washington by night tour for the loaned executives who work in Washington. Washington by night tour? What'd they all do? Get on a double-decker bus and be fed greasy, sleazy hamburgers? While a tour guide said, "That's the Capitol. That's the Washington Monument. That one over there is the White House. Oh, boy, aren't you excited and thrilled. Everybody get your camera ready." The audit reported that Global Impact, on top of that, was reimbursed for unreasonable, unallowable, or unsupported expenses of another $300,000. You see, we try to follow the rule of law here, which says that some people are alive only because it's illegal to kill them. And this is one of those instances. The expenses consisted of a torrent of petty expenses, including personal dry cleaning bills, gift shop purchases, So on your tour, you go in and you buy the little globe with the snow in it of the Washington Monument, and they billing that back? You got to be kidding me. How reprehensibly immature, elementary, childish, evil, and sadistic can you be? An awards banquet and the travel associated with it that was completely unrelated to the CFC program, and an $80 flower gift they bought for an employee. Some gift, huh? You know, talk about getting blood flowers. Those flowers had the blood of the alleged poor on them. I'll bet every damn one of these people that was involved in this was a Barack Obama supporter in 2008 and 2012. We're here to save the poor. We're going to fight for those poor right after we get done spending $1 million that we could have donated and made sure that some people who needed to eat have, you know, just a cheeseburger or something. Global Impact held a 2-week training conference at hotels in the Georgetown section of D.C. That's the most expensive neighborhood in D.C., folks. You buy a condominium there or a townhouse there, it's in the millions of dollars. No, you don't get a yard. It's just a postage stamp. You don't need to cut it with a lawnmower. You just go out with a pair of scissors and you can clip, 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 clip. They flew their workers to conferences in other cities, including New Orleans, Orlando, and Las Vegas. I mean, let's not pick a place like, you know, Bent Elbow, Wyoming. Let's pick a place where, you know, we can make sure that we can gamble, watch some live entertainment, live the exciting life, maybe stay over a couple of extra days and visit Disney. Staff arrived a day early and stayed a day late after the conferences because they were involved in planning. Well, we have to plan the conference that's a planning conference for the atrocities we're about to commit. They had to, quote, ensure timely presence at the start of the conference. I mean, I got to get here a day early just so that I'm not late. You know, if your 60-year-old or your 9-year-old tried to pull this nonsense on you, you'd slap that kid silly. The auditors pointed out that the conference started in the afternoon. How can you be late for it? You could have got the morning commuter flight. And, quote, for days following the conference, we did not understand the justification that would warrant this. In other words, for the days they stayed after the conference, what are they saying? They don't want to be early getting back to work? Global Impact reimbursed one staffer $1,000 for driving from Washington, D.C. to the Orlando conference, which would necessarily allow his family to come along. A round-trip flight cost $230. But while he was in Orlando, he wanted to make sure he got a chance to take the family to Disneyland. And, of course, they stayed in a hotel that was paid for by the conference. You know, we'll just get the kids one of those little fold-up beds or something. In addition to that, they justified or tried to justify in-office neck massages for the federal employees who were on loan as volunteers to alleviate their stress. These are their words, not mine, folks. This isn't reprehensible. Some people are alive just because it's illegal to kill them. Auditors flagged expenses like room service and movie rentals, even before the conference started, because, of course, they got there a day early so they wouldn't be late, so they all had to watch a couple of porn flicks while they were there. I mean, what else are we going to do to keep ourselves occupied while we're sitting here in this hotel? The auditors flagged the expenses. Global Impact insisted the expenses be allowed, even taking the unusual step of hiring a law firm to push back against the Inspector General in an effort to avoid having to pay for the bill themselves. Loaned executives are not campaign volunteers, the auditors repeatedly reminded Global Impact. They are federal employees who are temporarily assigned on a full-time basis to the CFC NCA and continue to receive their regular salary and benefits from their employing federal agencies during this time. Work related to the CFC is simply part of their official duty. Consequently, the argument that these federal employees need morale boosters because they serve without compensation doesn't carry any merit. The employees who were being paid to do charity work as volunteers frequently spent money thanking and rewarding each other, such as $51 per person appreciation luncheons that were both unreasonable and excessive, according to the auditor. In addition to being redundant, since the campaign also held a finale event where campaign workers were again recognized and rewarded, probably with plaques bought with our money, or at least money that was designated to go to the poor. These are people who are making 135% of what their public sector friends make, or private sector friends make, in the same exact job function, and they get a pension, and they've got the best health care in the nation. Why is everybody a king and nobody's a subject when it comes to the federal government? That wasn't all. There were multiple problems with the local federal coordinating committee. The Board of Federal Employees is supposed to be overseeing this. No kidding. I mean, that's the deal, folks. Everybody's in on the joke except for you and me. Quote, this is from the auditor. Expenses revealed a culture within the LFCC and Global Impact where the charging of meals as part of the normal course of business was considered to be an acceptable expense to the campaign. Every dollar spent on a bureaucrat's dinner was one that didn't go to the charity for which it was intended. The campaign has taken the position that any event where campaign business is conducted or where campaign staff is involved constitutes a campaign event, the expenses of which are chargeable to the campaign. The Office of Inspector General finds this approach to the administration of a campaign extremely disturbing and suspects that most donors would as well. This is an example of Global Impact's disturbing tendency to interpret the OPM CFC regulations in a manner that minimizes accountability. The Secret Service demanded that back in 2010, this is a separate report on a criminal investigation, the Secret Service determined that a Global Impact employee was using a donor's checkbook to sell their personal financial information to a Detroit-based violent crime ring that stole identities. The ring's hackers would drain the donor's bank account and wire the Global Impact employee a cut of the stolen money. These are the people that are sacrificing for the sake of those poor, helpless, hapless, desperate people, the unwashed masses.
Lovey, could you bring the checkbook, please? We'd like to make sure that we give this person something for lunch.
The Secret Service reported the Global Impact employee never faced any criminal consequence and told investigators she did it because she needed the money to help support her child. You think that would be a legitimate excuse for you when you went to court and stood before the judge? Really? Acosta, that was the woman who was making $500,000 running this little shindig. She's no longer at the helm. but she received a $150,000 bonus well after the auditors brought out all of this information. You see, this is not unusual, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pointing it out and I'm reading you this because this is the norm, not the exception to the rule. Every federal agency, every federal department, every federal government employee is doing the same thing to a lesser or a greater degree. They're all living large, like they're all Jay-Z's. They're all running around, spending everybody's money, living large on what? You. Living large on the poor they're supposed to be helping. You want to know why we're $17 trillion in debt? Because we've got people here who we're paying to live a lavish lifestyle that most of us have never seen. I don't get a chance to go into a restaurant and order a $60 dinner. And if I had to spend my own money for it, I wouldn't anyway. I'd go to a restaurant where I could get a $9 or a $10 dinner. I know the silverware is not quite as shiny. The plate doesn't have quite that same level of sheen. I know the tablecloth is plastic instead of linen. I understand that the water glass doesn't have a stem. I get it. The waiter is in blue jeans or black slacks instead of an evening gown. But how do you sleep at night? How do you put your head down on that pillow and meet with your girlfriends or your buddies and say, you know, we're sitting here, we're taking care of these poor people. Boy, I tell you what, we do everything. We work so hard. We work so hard. Really? How many kids could have eaten while you got a massage? How many mothers could have bought an old, secondhand, used car that was reliable instead of all of you jumping on first-class flights? You know, the car that would have enabled her to actually get to work. I have to ask you, America, if this is the nation we're trying to save, and this is what it's made up of, people like this, then frankly, we should just let it go. If this is the majority, if this is the new normal, if this is the majority of Americans and how they think and how they act, then it's not worth saving. Hard to say that for the minority who's getting pummeled out there and are trying to do the right thing. So we have two choices. We can take everybody who's got this feeling of entitlement and strip them of it, or strip the nation of them, one or the other. And I suspect it would be a whole lot easier to strip the nation of them. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please visit our friends over at the Battery Station, batterystation.com. real asset to our community, and a nationwide company that provides great services around the country. BatteryStation.com. Friends at AmericanResumeService.com. They've got a $200 resume package for $100. $100 will be donated back to America's Voice Now. You need a new resume, you need to update the one you got, now's the time. You can email me directly at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. See you tomorrow.